I think we have advanced quite a lot, and this in many ways, not only public-private sector, but also between communities. I think everyone realizes now that you can't achieve public sector benefits without involving the private sector. Take something like critical information infrastructure protection, which is very much a public issue. Nevertheless, the people who run the infrastructure are private, they're private companies. So it's absolutely essential to have them on board and to have their views fed into the policy process so that the policy process itself is economically viable. The last thing we want in Europe, I think, is to have legislation that forces companies to follow business models which don't allow them to make their business case. So first of all, we do recognize it. There are examples, and very good examples, of us moving forward. The one I'll give you is in the area of CIIP. Over the last year, we have launched the European Public-Private Partnership for Resilience. It's very well attended, and it's doing some very practical work. I think we're probably over 70 people in this forum, meeting 3-4 times a year, with 3 work groups defined, working on problems such as botnets, new legal regulations, etc. So it's going very much in the right direction, I think. I don't think so. Let's go back to the beginning. We do not have a centralized pool of data on security in Europe, which is, I would say, from a neutral third party. We do have some commercial reports, yeah? I think there's a lot of advantage in having a neutral third party to put this kind of data together and to manage it on behalf of the member states and indeed to exploit it. Just a few things which need to be said though here. Just because you have a great pool of data doesn't mean necessarily that you're better at predicting the future. You have to handle this data in a very specific way and know the difference between what you can predict and what you can't. But I do think it makes a lot of sense to do it. Now, how would you do this? I think the biggest barrier is political. I think we need to have a recognition of subsidiarity and structured processes for putting such a pool of data into place in such a way that no one feels threatened. So such a pool of data doesn't need to look at details. Yeah? It needs to look at trends. So you can anonymize the data. You can aggregate the data. But you still get something which is very useful, because at the moment, if there's trends happening in, let us say, Portugal, and another one happening in, let us say, France, and yet another one in Germany, it's very hard to put these together at the moment. Whereas if you had a single pool of data, then you can start to do things in a reasonable time frame. It's interesting to me that people still think of cloud as a technical revolution, which it isn't, not in my opinion anyway. Cloud is a business model, and indeed this is the way ENISA approaches the subject. So you have to take a holistic view of the situation. The risks are much more in the area of governance, in the area of processes, in the area of sharing responsibilities in a structured way. And yes, there are some technical risks, but they're by no means the most important, I would say. Let me give you a few examples. Governance. Who is responsible for what? It's not actually an easy question. Once you give over the day-to-day running of your applications, there's a split of responsibilities. The cloud provider cannot do everything. So exactly what do they do and what do you do? Yeah? I would advocate that the security should be in the hands of the clients, and the cloud provider should be doing, I would say, infrastructure security, but in such a way that the client maintains full control. This is an SLA issue. SLAs are very important in cloud. Yeah? Another issue, just to give you an idea of how complex this is where is the data? It's not obvious. If you're in the cloud, the data theoretically could be anywhere. It could be in China, it could be in India, it could be in Asia Pacific, who knows? Yeah? Knowing where the data is important from a legal perspective. So if something goes wrong, how do you make recourse to the laws if you don't even know where the data is? Just 2 examples of how complex cloud is. But I think if you were to ask me to choose what the biggest risk is, it's understanding the split of responsibilities. I think where cloud can bring a benefit is certainly for smaller companies and even medium-sized companies that cannot afford to invest in all the infrastructure necessary to protect their systems. If you're a very small company, obviously you can't spend a fortune on firewalls, intrusion detection systems, etc. There's a limit to what is reasonable. You can expect a cloud provider to do that because they have economies of scale. A similar thing goes for expertise of staff. It's not likely that a small or medium-sized company will be able to employ a barrage of security experts, but a cloud company should be able to do that. Now, things to look out for when you go into a cloud provider is how effectively they do that, of course. Do they make security checks on the personnel before they bring them on board? How well are these responsibilities defined? Again, is it clear who does what? What is the legal framework underlying the operations? All these things are extremely important. But the benefit is economies of scale and ability to attract and maintain the right kind of staff over a long period of time. What distinguishes cybersecurity from good old information security? Not a lot, actually. It's the perspective, it's the way you look at it. When you talk about cybersecurity, you tend to be concentrating on the global aspects of the problem. The fact that if something goes wrong here today, I may have to resolve an issue that's at the other side of the world. That doesn't mean to say that we're not doing all the normal good things that we did in the past to keep our infrastructure secure. And that's the important thing. This work is going on and it is being appropriately prioritized. Perhaps where we need to up the priority somewhat, although it is happening, is the international collaboration aspects and the fact that countries need more and more, I think, to take an approach to national security that recognizes their dependence on other member states within Europe and indeed on other global players internationally. This is certainly a priority, but we need to put more resources and more effort in there, I think.